on. So anyway, we're just going to kick this off like no one's in the chat and just keep going from there. So where I left off on this last one was just letting you guys know that my mission now was this. My mission was to go out to Sangin and as a pretty much lone operator, right? Because we were sending 14 people, 14 Americans as the initial liaison of Americans to go out there, set up our comms, start setting up our networks. Cool. Yeah, it looks like it's operating on real time a lot better right now too. Start setting up our networks and start setting up the base to be able to house a company of United States Marines to come in there while we do a left seat, right seat with the British Royal Marines. And this is what I found out is now I was going to be attached to the British Royal Marines, the 40 commandos, and going out there. So I had to spin up and find out a little bit more about those guys before I went out there as well. So the task was to go out there, befriend those guys, find out as much information as possible that I could, not about them, but about instead what the terrain was. Because as Americans, we only had the reporting that the Brits would let us see. And as we know, whenever it comes to sharing information through international stuff, you kind of have to like hose it down a little bit and cut it down. So I had to go out there and figure out everything, infrastructure, troop movements, rank and file kind of deal of the Taliban. What was going on right there? What was going on in northern Sangin? What was going on in southern Sangin? What was going on to the west of where we were at that point in time out by the desert? How troops were moving in, how they were moving supplies out, what they were doing in order to fund all this stuff. I then had to also learn a little bit more, or I had to learn everything about I had to find out about the Afghan army and the main people that were there on base with us, because that was a tremendous counterintelligence risk. One thing you guys probably don't know of, and this was starting to happen more and more as American troops are starting to come in, is that these Afghan, the guys that were actually in the army and the guys that were actually in the Afghan police, they were actually starting to turn. They were starting to turn on the troops that they were with. So if they were with the Brits, or if they were with, even if they were just with the police force or whatever, these guys were like, what is it? Not defacting. What the hell is the word I'm looking for? God, brain, I wish you were working today. Anyway, they were leaving. They would leave. They would literally like leave their weapons while they were on post, and they would like go and join the Taliban, or they would turn their guns. Like, crazy as this sounds, they would turn their guns and they would try to kill as many like American troops or British troops as possible. This happened numerous times that I was over there. So actually being on the base with these guys and having them in there with no actual physical barrier or anything like that, super crazy. What type of protocol did we have when we allowed the nationals to come onto the base? What were they able to see? What information were they shown? What kind of ability were they given to view our operations? What kind of information can they collect? I'm telling you, all right, so long story short now, what it comes down to is these are what I was tasked with. I end up going to Fob Jackson at night. We fly in on a fucking CH-53. And, of course, I'm shitting my fucking pants, okay? Because a fucking helicopter 4 days before that was literally shot down by the Taliban right outside of the base that I'm going to right now. What's up, buddy? Good boy. So that's what's going on. Is we're flying in on the CH-53. It's just me and a couple other young Marines, right? It's all comm dudes, like Lance Corporals and below. And we're fucking going into the deadliest place in Afghanistan right now. We're flying in at night. We're in a CH-53, which is a super slow-moving helicopter, by the way. You can hear it for fucking miles. And, oh man, I can't remember if we got shot at or not. I'm not going to try to pull a fucking Hillary Clinton here, but either way, it was just par for the course because every fucking helicopter that came into Sangin was getting shot at. You see fucking tracers flying by and all this shit at nighttime. And the mindset was of flying at night so that they couldn't see, because it made it harder for them to be able to target because they don't have night vision optics. So anyway, we flying at night. Myself, I have an interpreter now, short little shit of a guy. Pretty good dude, but at the same time, kind of a little cunt. He's all pissed off because we're going into Sangin, and he's refusing to go on any patrol. He's like, the only thing I'm going to do is stay on base with you. That's it. So I'm like, all right, whatever, kind of deal. What are you doing, buddy? So we get into Sangin, and the first thing I do is I've got to find a place to put all my stuff. So I get there, and there's literally only I think there's 3 Marines total there at the time. We have our own little space. Now, there's a big difference between coming into Sangin and the way that things are set up there than what we were doing before. Before, like all of our other little places where we had like a GP tent, and then we'd like kind of sandbag the top of it. Every hab, that's what we called them, was a hab, like a habitat. Every hab that we had set up there was HESCO barriers. So a HESCO barrier is literally just like, I don't know, let's say like a 3x3x5 kind of like bin that was just packed with dirt. So very, very solid, very stable. And then we'd build those up, and then on top we had these metal roofs, and then on top of the metal roofs we would sandbag. So these roofs were all slanted at a V, and it made it so that mortars should not be able to penetrate it, right? And mortars were a big deal here in Sangin. These guys had all the munitions. They had all, defecting. Thank you. That was the word I was looking for. I appreciate it. I'm glad you got my back today, man. Maybe next week I'm not going to fast on Sunday. I'll fast like Friday or no, I can't do that. We'll figure it out. Anyway. So things are already, like the second I get there, very, very different tone and a very different energy. The base itself is a seized mansion from a drug lord there in Sangin, and it was the biggest mansion that was there. This thing is like 4 or 5 stories, sitting on its own kind of little peak in a way, like a mound, overseeing pretty much all of Sangin in a way. And of course we took over that and we turned that into pretty much that was the British COC. There's a lot going on. There's a gun tower up on the top, snipers and 50 cals and big guns and stuff up there. Tons of javelin rockets too. Our little COC was a little bit further away. It was just a little bit further to the north of that. And it was just like a rebuilt hab, just for us to start getting everything up and running. I walk into the hab. There's a few tables that are empty. There was 5 Marines there from what I recall. We had our comm guys working in the back, and they had the mainframes that were up and running. Some big desks right in the center with our TVs and stuff like that were going to kind of highlight the events that were going on so they could do a COC meeting. Just a bunch of desks. There was one set up over on the side for me. There was one set up right in the center that was for the actual person, like the COC watch. And then there was 2 set up for the sergeant major and the colonel. Because now, and the biggest difference now, is who I was falling under was no longer, I was still a part of 3-7. I was still a part of my HET, right? So my OIC and my chief were still the ones that were directly in charge of me. I was still attached to the 3-7, but I wasn't, because 3-7 wasn't going to be in town for another month and a half. So now I belong to RCT2, Regimental Combat Team 2, which was higher level. They were from the East Coast, Camp Lejeune, and who I was to report directly to for the majority of this stuff was a gentleman named Colonel, I believe it was Colonel Ragland. No, Colonel Kennedy. I'm retarded, not Colonel Ragland. Colonel Paul Kennedy. And this ties into a lot of stuff here. So I get into the COC, but there's none of those guys there yet. There's one major that's there. I forget the name of this major. He was a redheaded dude, 40-something years old, I think. Kind of a goofy guy in a way, but he was super fucking cocky too. He was big into CrossFit, but not really, if that makes any sense. Like, he's one of those people that, you know, brags about doing CrossFit, but isn't in shape at all. And that was him. He had his own little whiteboard, and he'd like write the workout of the day, the WOD. And it was like what I call like any idiot workout or any asshole workout. He would just write a bunch of stuff up there, right? And he'd be proud of himself for making this workout. And then he'd come in and he'd like write his time down for what he did. And he'd be like, guys, you gonna do this workout today? Look at my time. You gonna do this workout today? I'm sitting over here like building all my shit up and getting fucking actual work done. But he was the liaison between the Brits and the Colonel and the RCT. So he was there. There was a gunny there who was the comms sergeant in a way. Not, we don't call it that, but he was the gunnery sergeant that was in charge of all the comm idiots. So he was in charge of comm. His name was Gunny Barr. Bald-headed dude who has never been on a deployment in his entire time been in the military. Type of guy that he considered his 2-month attachment to some infantry unit going to Okinawa as a deployment. He hit on the drill field for the majority of his time frame, and he was scared out of his mind being located in Sangin right now. Another gentleman, Staff Sergeant Justice Bartel. He was a 0369 platoon sergeant, infantry platoon sergeant, who is now on a desk job because he was the most proficient infantryman within RCT2. So the colonel directly appointed him to that position. Corporal Keene, who was the RCT2 intel analyst that they had directly attached, who got sent out there to pretty much be my analyst in a way, and the RCT's analyst as well. And then, like I said, we had a scrum of other little minions that were running around. The other like 6 comm guys that came along with me because they had a lot of comm work that they had to do in order to set up the SIPR and NIPRNet, get all the computers set up for all this other stuff, in order for us to stay connected and get back information back to Leatherneck. Anyway, long story short, I get my little desk set up in the COC, try to make as much friends as possible, and then automatically I'm pulled right then and there from the British intelligence faction. They come, they grab me, and they say, hey, we're doing our intel briefing and stuff like that right now. It's best that you come in, hear what's going on, because we got a lot of shit that's going on right now. Plus, you get to meet the team. So these guys are super welcoming, by the way. Super awesome dude. And what was really weird, to be honest with you, is I show up there, and then there's a contingent of like British Royal Marines that are in the intel space, and then British Army as well that are working there. And they're going through and they're giving their intel scoop and intel skinny and doing whatever. Then they introduce me. And I'm kind of like learning faces and names and kind of what's going on. But literally the second we get in there, like shit is hot. Like things are going on. You're learning all sorts of stuff. You're learning the who's who, the big time Taliban movements that are going on there and all that other stuff. And we literally don't finish. I think I got in there about 8 o'clock at night, and we don't finish that briefing and stuff like that until like 10:30, 11. They get me back. They got to walk me back to the COC because I have no fucking clue around the way around there and all that other stuff. Get back to the COC, set up a little bit, find out where my hab is as best as possible. And they're like, all right, kind of see you in the morning kind of thing, right? Like kind of deal. I don't have any work to do at this point in time. So just kind of like learning the ropes at this point in time. Put my interpreter, is my interpreter with me or is he, I forget where I put him. I put him somewhere though. Anyway, get my stuff unpacked as best as possible and go to bed. And the next morning I wake up to machine gun fire. I wake up to machine gun fire and us getting mortared. Completely different from what it was like before. All of a sudden, I don't think we have alarms or anything like that, but you hear the hustle and bustle and people moving. You hear people yelling and moving. I grab my gear, I go outside, figure out and find out kind of what's going on. And I see these guys like running to the wall, hear the machine gun tower that we have going on, engaging and doing different stuff. And literally after that, like probably a little 15-minute skirmish or whatever, I just go to the COC to kind of find out what's going on. And they're like, welcome to Sangin, buddy, kind of deal, right? Like this, I'm like, all right, cool. They're like, this is going to happen numerous times throughout the day. Just be prepared for that. Be near your kit at all times, your rifle, your helmet, your fucking body armor and stuff like that. And just be ready for that to happen. So let me describe just that kind of ins and outs of like the first days of being right there in Sangin first and foremost. Literally breakfast, lunch, and dinner. You're literally going out and you're grabbing your gear and you're going on the wall. At this point in time, we don't have a lot of guys. Yeah, mortars are one hell of an alarm for sure. Completely different from Buji. Completely different from everything that we face up to this point. The Taliban is very, very offensive. They're constantly trying to do something in order to kind of keep you on your feet, get you moving, and bait you into something. It's not usually sporadic gunfire either. They are constantly trying to apply some kind of pressure onto you. What they're really trying to do, I guess if I'm looking back at it now, what they're really trying to do is keep us on our bases. And I'll explain that here in a little bit. So I'm in the COC. I'm getting my SIPR set up. I'm getting my computer set up, starting some of my reporting processes, going and, now it's daylight. I can actually see around the base, figuring my way around, going and talking to the British intel guys over there and all this other stuff. And next thing you know, huge gunfire, huge amounts of gunfire coming from the south. Our two main gun. So this base is pretty big, and I guess by pretty big, let me give it to you in a dimension. I guess like I want to say at least the southern wall is at least a quarter mile in length, all HESCO barrier, and we have like 3 or 4 gun platforms, like towers, 3 or 4 gun towers just on that southern wall alone. Each of them with 1 or 2 240 Bravos, which is the same thing as the gun that I was using before, 240 Golf, 7.62 firing machine gun, pretty good stuff. Then we have the main guns that are up in the main tower. We have our own mortar set. We have big heavy guns that are up in the main gun tower, like I was saying, all spread throughout. Our eastern wall is probably about, I'd say, yeah, we're in a pretty good box. Everything's about a quarter mile in length, as far as that's concerned. So it's a pretty big base as well, quarter mile by quarter mile. Maybe a little bit bigger. Either way, our southern wall is getting engaged. 3 towers are now firing, right? So you got to think of, if you have 2 guns in each, you have to have at least 4 men manning it. If all of the guns are firing, you have to have people that are what we call runners, right? You got to have people. We set up we call them hoopties, right? You set up a chain gang, and you start passing boxes of ammo up. And then the people that aren't passing ammo up and doing the kind of like running the errands, like we're getting people on the wall in order to return fire, because now the Taliban is actually engaging most of the time they're engaging from max effective range of their weapons, but they're firing RPGs, which only have a max effective range of like 300 meters. Same thing with, the AK-47s and stuff like that. And then their PKMs are pushed out a little bit further. So you have enemy that are out in the open, and our entire southern wall, our entire southern aspect, 800 meters south at least, is cleared out. So from there it's less than that. It's like 200 meters are cleared out, and then it turns directly into like jungle in a way. So the Taliban are able to literally hide within that 200 meters. In that jungle, they have literally pits and stuff like that dug out where they would fire from and fire their RPGs from and stuff. So then going out there and getting up on the wall, you actually end up returning fire and, people can, potentially get killed and can kill the enemy too. And what they're essentially trying to do too is like they're trying to puncture a hole in the HESCO barriers. So that's what they're trying to do with like the heavy fire and then the RPGs and stuff like that too. So you need to get out there and you need to return fire, and you need to otherwise you do face the risk of being overrun in a way, even though it would be difficult. So it's lunchtime, and this is what happens. Alarm kind of goes off. They're like, hey, like everyone every spare hand get on the wall if you're not providing, if you're not doing the hoopty, right? If you're not doing, passing the ammo and all that stuff. So this is literally day 1 technically. And I'm already up on the wall and I'm already engaging the enemy, with my M4 and just my kit and all this other stuff. After that, go back to the COC. And I think Justice is on watch. And go back there, and Keen comes in there, Corporal Keen, as I said, the analyst, and Gunny Bar sitting there watching a fucking movie, and I think someone says something. I'm like, I go in there and I drop my gear and all this other stuff, and Keen says something, and I think Justice looks at us and they're like, was that a pretty good one or what? It sounded pretty good. Keen's like, yeah, it was pretty good. It wasn't too crazy. And I'm sitting here I'm brand new. I'm like, damn, that was fucking wild in comparison to what we're dealing with. And these guys are just like, whatever. And then Justice looks over at Gunny Bar and he's like, hey, Gunny, why don't you get your gear and go on the wall? And that's when I start to realize kind of the dynamic that's going on there. And we're really going to dig deeper into that dynamic that's going on. And you know what? I think at that point, I'm going to actually call it for right now. But I wanted you guys, we're in Sangin right now. We're in Sangin. You've met Justice. You've met Gunny Bar. You've met Corporal Keen. These are some big players that are about to come up and some further stories that are coming up here. But we're in Sangin, and things are about to get really, really, really heated. Really heated. This is just the beginning. This is just a little taste of what's going on. The shit starts to get fucking crazy. With that said, though, gentlemen that are listening, I gotta promote a little bit here. Please do, again, hit the like button, especially because now we had to do 2 different types of transmissions here. And hit the like button. Share this stuff if you really enjoy it. Gents, I have obviously a book that is for sale. Live Your Best Life in 30 Days. It kind of highlights a lot of stuff post coming back from war that I had to deal with and figure out how to become better from all of it. Definitely would appreciate some purchase in that field. Purchase my book on Amazon, Live Your Best Life in 30 Days. I also have an online dating mastery course that I'm going to put in the description below if you guys would not mind. If you know someone that's interested in doing something like that, I'm not saying you got to buy it. But the big thing I'd love for you guys to be a part of, I got those 2 other things. The biggest thing that I think would be beneficial to you guys listening right now would be thewartribe.com. It's a forum where we as men get on there and we talk about a lot of this stuff as far as being men's concerned, and how to get better and how to build and how to grow. So with that said, guys, I will see you either Wednesday, if you listen to my John Fitch Red Pill Smash Bros, Wednesday at 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Saturday morning, Pacific Standard Time at 9:30 Pacific Standard with John Fitch again. And again, next Sunday, 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time for War Story Sunday. Anyway, thanks for tuning in.